Hello, everybody. So, thank you all very much for coming. Hope the beer and pizza have been to your satisfaction. So, first off, thank you very much to Steve and everyone else at ThoughtWorks for hosting us tonight. We actually did nothing for any of this, so that's all Steve. That's great. Cheers. All right, so we're doing things a little bit differently this evening. Normally people give talks and whatever we want to talk about. So tonight we're going to be talking about a contentious subject for some, a subject other people may not care about. To bind or not to bind? That is the question. And we'll probably not come up with an answer. So, if everyone introduce themselves to start off with, shall we start from your end?
I'm Ben. Hello. Hi, Ben. You're awake. Cool.
I'm Yanis, the Apple System Specialist at the London School of Economics.
So I'm François. I need a bit more introduction than Ben, I guess. So I'm FT from Slack. So bonjour. So I'm a bit late. I just flew from Basel. I was in a Jumpstart. I just finished a Jumpstart today, so I'm a bit. But anyway, so I'm working for Amaris as a consultant, and I've been working for Max with 10 years, and we have several projects going on, and we can talk about this in the pub, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I'm David, if anyone hasn't met me, from AMSYS in UK. We're an external consultancy, Apple repair, everything Apple company, and lots of Active Directory. So get to see all sides, and all everything to do with Active Directory and Macs.
And I'm Graham, and I work for Xerox, and we run call centers for. I work for one particular client, but there you go. And we are obviously lots of AD. So start off with, let's take a quick poll. Who binds to AD? Stick your hand up. Wow, that's depressing, isn't it?
Right, it's going to pop.
Yep.
So, one of the things that's come up is there's become a more recent movement to not bind to AD, and I've always bound my Macs to AD, and thought that we'd maybe put together some arguments why you would, and then the guys who don't put together some arguments why you maybe shouldn't. And then we can talk around things and pull things apart, and we want you guys to actually speak up a bit, like you've done earlier, and kind of get involved in some of the things. So, I bind everything to AD because it allows anybody to log into a machine. They get a characteristic in a login, and enables things such as 802.1x, using Radius if you're using, especially in AD. CS, if you're extremely AD-centric, it ties in nicely and gives you the opportunity to sync across in the environment for things like your certs and your passwords and stuff like that. And it can be a bit of a pain. You want to make sure your time and DNS is up, but that's kind of why, that's one of the reasons I say why you should. Anybody else other reasons why you should bind to AD before we get onto the other reasons why you should?
Binding, on something that's been on the note was schools, labs. So you've got a school, 2,000 students, and a Mac lab. You can't create 2,000 local accounts on every Mac. So Active Directory is the answer. Luckily, that's one of the situations where it works. If they're iMacs, for example, wired in with Ethernet, it's kind of got the best chance of working.
Yeah, I work in a very similar environment. So we have 95% of my machines are multi-user machines. So we need to have. Can you hear me? I can see
it's muffling it.
We can't all be as loud as you, James.
So yeah, I have multi-user machines. I have 10 people logging in every day. I need to bind to AD, unfortunately.
So that's really short and sweet why you use Mine. Anybody else got anything to add to that? Was that it's kind of a bit succinct, isn't it? But Neil?
If you're at university and you use Janet as your ISP, probably do. One of their policies is that they like to know who's accessing the network at all the time, so and the users logging into AD identifies them.
So Neil just said that Janet and maybe other compliance policies that you have in place, you need to know who's logged into the machine and who's then doing what. So you need those, you need people to be identified by their login to be able to find them further up the chain. Is that?
Well, manageability. So if you've got printers all over the place, they're following printers, you have all these file shares all over, it's easier just to add them to the groups and have them log in rather than have the local account and then enter their passwords, save it to keychain brings.
So, so Fizzy, also known as Richard. So Fizzy from Slack, if you're on there, and if you're not, why not? Mentioned a great point there about leveraging the kind of member of the group stuff. So for share mounting, we actually use it for printer mapping as well, but leveraging that more of that kind of group-based directory thing.
I'd probably reinforce Neil's point a bit. I've experienced this myself in a university environment where there's 1,000 or so Macs, and half of them are for staff. And if one of those staff members creates a local account called Bob and logs in, you have no idea who that user is. So the machine could be anywhere, and in Casper or whatever management system you're using, you look and see, I can see Bob logged in, and don't know who Bob is, and there's no other information. That machine could just be gone at that point.
So it's a silent bot.
Yeah, it's a silent bot. Yeah. I like it. Sure, I didn't even say that. The ability to identify who a user is, Active Directory is nice for that. It's not necessarily a reason to bind the machine, but at least you can see, right, this user's logged in, and that's the user in Active Directory, and I know who it is, and so on.
So Dan was saying for like SOX compliance, which I've worked in SOX compliant environments, and they can be a little bit outdated. Just quickly digress, but we required a firewall at one client I worked at. They had no rule set, but they required a firewall to be on. This is back in the days when you had IP firewall, so I just wrote an extension attribute to make sure it was running, and that passed the SOX control. So they can actually be a little bit outdated, I suppose, if other controls are put in, if that's the thing. So, based on all that, these two gentlemen are going to educate us all.
Well, the other thing I'm using for is management as well. So you can add an AD group to the administrators group. So rather than having to maintain a local admin account, you don't. You can log in with your AD credentials to do management.
Assuming your computers never leave your network, that's fine.
Yeah, the point is, if in my environment, if someone they'll come and sit next to me, and they're like, "Oh, I'm AD, I can talk, I can look up." So we actually have local accounts, but the AD binding is for my benefit, not for end user benefit.
That's a good point. Can I pick this up then? Because this is a nice way to kind of transition to the other side. And can I just say, I'm not here to advocate against binding to AD. Right? That's what I think the point is to facilitate the discussion.
Is this supposed to be a fight with advertising?
This is the most polite fight you've ever seen.
So I think this is. I took the opportunity because this is a good point. I think it really comes down to the environment that you run. Right? If you run an educational environment, if you manage an educational environment, binding your clients to AD, clients that will inevitably can be accessed by up to 2, 5, 10, 50,000 students, it's a no-brainer. I don't think anyone here is going to dispute that. I suppose my point of view on this is, as we're moving towards, and this isn't just in an educational context, I think generally computing or social computing is moving towards an approach where you provide access to services rather than to a user context, and we see this with iOS. Right? iOS is a new computing platform that is contextless in that respect. And we have tools. Some of them are hacks that these guys have been working on. It's great, but we have tools that can provide access to services that can be provided, or that we've been relying on AD to have access to. I don't know if anyone's still following. I see less and less of a reason to bind the computer to AD, to restrict the computer to a particular directory, the purpose of which is to provide identity management, but ends up managing the machine. See quite a few blanks there. So anyway, that's a twist that I just wanted to kind of throw. It's not necessarily a technical discussion always. DEP, right? It's an easy way. You still use AD, but you use AD's identity management abilities to assign automatically, right, to provision a machine to someone and still have their corporate identity imported. I can go on. I don't know if you want to add.
It's just for anybody here using DB. Okay.
Still new.
That's cool.
It's still a baby. But it's still new.
No, I was curious.
Yeah, no, it's good on iOS. But
I wasn't saying it's rubbish. I was just asking.
Bye.
Sorry. Yeah, just keep it.
So, about 3 years ago, I was managing 400 computers. How do you say, like computer park? I don't know what to say, but like 400 workstation, and we had 40 locations, which meant 40 netboot servers, which meant like so. Yeah, you always. I won't tell the story about imaging, but you all know it. Maybe a bit too much for Ben. And I was binding to Open Directory, so again.
Anyone binding to Open Directory?
No, never know.
I was using MCX. I was using a lot of stuff.
On the Magic Triangle?
Yeah. No, just
cylinder
the pure point. I don't know how to say that. It was only one, which is Open Directory, so it was much easier. And then I changed company, and I had the exact same request from the client, which was like 400 workstation spread in 40 locations. And I respect tradition, but I wanted a change, and I wanted to make it good. And Apple provided VPP, provided DP, provided the kind of more mature MDM way, MDMs. And we have Windows 10 coming with our church starting to change the mindset from Windows admins. So what I wanted to say, I say what is the opposite of what I was doing is instead of doing anything in-house, imaging, doing MCX, doing whatever, let's do it the most future-proof way, let's say, which is going full Apple, which means that we are using the retail store for buying, for maintaining, for supporting, for training the users. And when you say a retail store with DP, it means that you don't have access to AD. So that was my first problem. So how can I bind my computers to AD if I don't have access to AD? So there's a couple of ways to do it, but my way was to leverage GP, which, as you said, I used the identity. So how does it work? During the MacBuddy setup assistant, it asks for your login password. The user enters it, and then the computer is assigned to this particular user. And from there, you get a login password, which is kind of the same as the AD. It's like suggested, you can change, but you get a local 501 user that is the same as his AD user. And this, you don't need direct connection to AD. You still need the connection to the MDM, but that's it. So I did this, and then started to look good, to feel good, but we are missing some things. We are missing, for example, SSO. And that's why I said, oh, the ScareMinder is very cool. You can use SSO, and it's only for bound machine, so it didn't work. And then we started to change and make it work with a boundless machine. Is it the word? Yeah. Okay. Unbound machine.
Anybody else use CurbMinder?
Oh,
You're looking really blank.
So that brings us on to a point. Those of you who bind, whose machines are one-to-one deployment? So why do you bind? That's the question.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's multi-user. It's provisioning multi-user machines and giving everyone their own environment.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are advantages to binding, but I'm intrigued to see what everyone's doing.
So provide network services via Kerberos?
Yeah, the curve taking you
Mostly Kerberos, not all Kerberos.
So that was
Quick networks, which take a user ID.
well, we'll start with Kerberos. Calm down. So what Francois was saying was there's a product called CurbMinder, which I admit I've got a vested interest in. I'm trying to work with Francois. But that's where Francois did a product CurbMinder, which sell it.
But basically, just creates Kerberos ticket. So you're all familiar what is Kerberos, single sign-on. So you get it automatically when you have AD. You need, of course, to log out, log in every 24 hours to get the ticket renewed. So maybe you're already aware of this. So this Kerberos tickets permits to give you access to other things. So follow me printing, so websites or whatever. And it's a PM Buco, which
Yeah, PM Buco, Peter.
Go on, you pronounce it.
Rukowinski.
There we go.
yeah,
Anybody here use AD Passmod before I broke it? There we go. The guy who wrote CurbMinder to kind of partner with it.
so the job of Kerberos is to renew the tickets every 24 hours or at every network connection to the corporate directory. And so you don't need to log in, log out, or restart your machine because now nobody does it anymore. Like I'm sure if we do like an extended attribute, the uptime of the machine would be at least 30 days, I think. So Kerberos is broken today, so you need something to renew this. So Kerberos was it, and if you're not bound, you need to have the realm and things. So what I did basically, and then I started, and then Macmillan did some things. We all did some. We'll continue it, and the idea was just to add a login screen. That's it. It was quite easy. So it means that when the user gets opens their computer at the first time the Kerberos runs, they ask for the login, which is your login at your realm, whatever, pentland.com, I guess, and the password that is stored in Kitchen. Which means from now on, you will have a Kerberos ticket that is always up to date, even if you connect to the VPN or you connect to the corporate network, or you leave your login, your session logged in forever. So this was quite good. You can customize it by setting profile. So it's already your realm is already filled in. And it works very well. So this was one of the steps that we wanted to do to make the SSO, the Windows Mac working a bit more integrated. Sorry, in the Windows world. And now we're starting to tackle the shares. So Fizzy, I think you were talking about the shares. So to leverage it. DFS, access-based immersion, whatever, but to have the shares automatically mount when the user connects to the enterprise network without keychain or anything.
So with what Francois was saying, so the clients generate Kerberos ticket with the same similar username or their domain username. They generate Kerberos ticket, authenticate to your Kerberos services with that. If you're then under Janet or something, you've got a Kerberos proxy or something like that. With that would give you the identification, right? That would identify the client as being FTIF, P-Toms, Matt Mule, I stealthily go to work and give myself my nickname. But in that, for identification piece, there's already potentially stuff out there. All you need is that Kerberos ticket, right? Or am I, just talking about identification, am I a little bit off with that? Just for that, I know that we used the Kerberos proxy previously, and that was just based on username. So saying as long as a ticket, then okay.
But it's still just a
How
direct
common
one,
are
isn't it?
Kerberos proxies then?
Well, you guys tell me, how many people have Kerberos proxies?
In my experience, very few.
Okay.
That's your issue there.
But if it's supported, there's no reason you couldn't try and get that activated.
But if you've got Kerberos services, then as long as you've got a TGT on the Mac, it doesn't really matter how that TGT and then the subsequent tickets are obtained. It's Kerberos. Yeah. Got principles. It's no problem.
This automatically renews every 24 hours.
At every network change.
Oh, every network.
It checks if the AD domain controller is available. If it is, it renews the ticket.
Using password, keychain password.
Yes.
So it'll be the users. So CodeMinder refreshes the Kerberos ticket for a user if it's due to expire. We actually won't do it if it's valid, will it? It's kind of coming up, or can't quite remember the metric, but within the user's login keychain is their username password again, and it uses those details. So the app itself is using the user's details within the user's keychain.
Is this to be used in collaboration with any password? No.
So it was.
What I'm thinking, what's the situation when AD or whatever the network, whatever the identification service requires a password change?
So today, only CodeMinder. Today, if your password is expired or revoked or changed, it sees that it doesn't work, delete the keychain entry and ask for a new password. So of course, there's some things that would be interesting to work with AD Passman to maybe have them in connection to warn the user 15 days before that he needs to change the password.
I mean, that was Peter's kind of original idea. The requirement was to not just notify of expiry, but also to renew the Kerberos ticket. So they're two separate products, but they can kind of work together. But yeah, I mean, I think I advocate my users logging out because I install everything and log out. If they want the new iTunes to work with their new shiny iPhone that I'm really jealous they bought, they have to log out to get the newest version. I know where I am, they're pretty cool. They're pretty good with logging out. How many of you guys people actually log out kind of on a regular basis?
We enforce it.
I mean, that's about 3 people. 4 people. Right, cool. So yeah, so if you've got any drive mappings and they've left the machine on overnight, they disconnect, right?
No.
Or
They'll maintain if they're already mapped.
right.
It's just that if they try and map something else, I guess, then the ticket's expired. And that point they'll be prompted.
So we've got an 8-hour ticket expiry.
Okay.
So it expires at 8 hours post. No, sorry, 10 hours. So it works during the working day. It's fine when they're active doing stuff. When they leave the machine idle, they come back in and they get their shares.
It disconnects.
Yeah.
Is that SMB? Or the machine's going to sleep? Or?
Yeah. At the moment. I've not really looked into it because I've been telling them to log out every night and log back in. And my people have been quite good. But maybe something like CodeMinder would kind of facilitate that. But I wanted to see how many people have that.
What's the deal with the screensaver? Because the screensaver, I mean, I was told that's one of the reasons they enforce the password and lock screen, so that when you authenticate, the ticket's renewed and the ticket's supposed to be renewed. Yeah, so if you're, I guess if people change the default behavior and don't have the screen blocking, they can run into problems. But by default, it will renew the ticket, won't it?
So I have another issue. I had another issue with this, is that we provide Ethernet and Wi-Fi with 802.11x, 1x, sorry. And so the Wi-Fi takes a few seconds maybe to start, so this doesn't work. And users prefer to use the Wi-Fi over Ethernet, even if Ethernet is faster, because they're just browsing websites and they don't care. Yeah. So that was another.
Okay, so over Wi-Fi, it's not necessarily that reliable.
Yeah.
Renewing the ticket.
So I think one of the other points was about group memberships for things, to allocate resources to people and stuff like that. So in regards to drive mappings and stuff like that, these challenges you guys have faced, and how do you deal with that?
With us, we use, for drive mappings, we use, I don't remember what it's called now, it's Extreme ZIP basically has been renamed to whatever it's called again. So we bundle everything together in one share, we present it as that. So we move in towards an almost 100% self-service kind of environment for our one-to-one deployments. So if a user wants to install, to basically have access to these drives, they run the package in self-service. From that point on, at every login, it will either auto-mount, depending on how they've logged in. We still have computers that are bound to AD. Right? We have about 600 Macs, so whatever decision we take, we're not basically going to just go around during the night and change everyone's computer. So it's going to be an incremental change, and because mainly of cultural reasons, we see people wanting to have a lot more flexibility and autonomy than they're used to. And again, we have about 85% of our staff Macs are laptops, which also plays another big role. The desktops we could continue binding. They don't go anywhere. They stay in one place. You know it's going to work. But once we started hitting this interesting situation in the sanity where they would go away and they would have to restart on the train because the screen froze and all that until they up and fixed it and so on, it created some problems. So again, it's the same for shares, it's the same for printers, it's the same for most services that they're advertised through something like self-service. We use self-service, whatever it's going to be in the future. And if you want access to something, you can get it that way. It turns out works fine for us at the minute. Like I said, for machine is bound to AD through single sign-on. Kevminder has been working very well for us, so I think we're going to be rolling it out a bit more widely. And again, it depends on the environment, but ironically, we are getting better feedback from our users if we not leave them alone, although this is what they're telling us. I have people saying, how can I get a laptop without you even touching it? Right? Yeah, this is where you go out and you see what the DT can do for you, and you roll it out as quickly as possible. And they're happy. I mean, again, it depends what sort of person you're talking about. An academic researcher who brought in, £3 million through the fancy program, sees their laptop as their property. I'm sure if you work in the private sector, you don't have this problem, and I'm jealous, but we do.
So you're sneaker netting kind of Casper on there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been very open about what it is we're doing, but effectively, we've only recently agreed on what is called the light touch build, which I think is going to become a default, where we provision machines either through DP or if they want, we do it for them. And we only put self-service, a couple of utilities like Copper Dialog and so on, so we can interact with them. And we apply security scripts and configuration profiles that have been agreed with our information security manager and so on and so forth. Nobody can say anything about compliance, right? So we use it quite a lot. And that's it. Not even Office or anything else, printers. It's up to the user, and we give them a choice. And if most of our academics see themselves as advanced users, Many of them are, in all fairness. Look, it's better than it was 6 or 7 years ago, right? Because they bought a Mac 5 years ago at home, and now they sort of know what they're doing, up to the point where if you provide them with a nice, stable environment through something like self-service or the equivalent in Monkey, they can do their job. And most of them, that's all they want to do. Again, keep in mind that the academics don't do fancy stuff, most of them anyway, that you will see in a development company or something like that. So that's it. It's not. I'm not here to argue against AD because of technical reasons. I think culture plays a big role. Again, me coming from a higher education environment, I've got other things to think about than potentially most of you or many of you. But I'm seeing it with the work of these guys or people like them. It becomes easier to provide access to services rather than bind to AD and then have to kind of do what you've been doing for a while and so on within the restrictions that this puts you in.
So on the Active Directory side, I'd say if it worked properly, I would use it. I'd use it completely. Yeah, if I had a company with 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, laptops, desktops, didn't matter. If it worked, I'd definitely use it. I find some people saying that you don't need to bind to AD anymore, and they're coming with lots of reasons why, and they're all very valid, but we're also ignoring the fact that we're not using it because it doesn't work properly. What if it did work properly?
From which perspective? AD not working because the AD administrator hasn't got a clue, or AD not working because Apple have broken .local again?
Let's just say...
Who's using .local for AD?
Doors over there.
Yeah. I'm not.
You can leave your admin card at the back.
Pick a domain for your Active Directory, such as
tenco.local.
I'm sure there's about 13 called Toso.locals and 10 codes as well.
That's what you're supposed to call it.
Yeah. Sorry.
So are we saying that Apple should test for every configuration option Microsoft provides in Active Directory?
No.
There we go. Yeah, there's how much, because there's only limited development resources. Do we want them to make OS 10 itself work better, or do we make the AD plugin work better?
But it's just .local, really, isn't it? I mean, it's regressed. I mean, Alcatel is the only OS that hasn't regressed. It worked from 10.11.0.
Well,
if the AD plugin could work a bit, that would be...
I'll be honest, I don't have any .locals, but I do work with multiple Active Directory domains
from
at work.
the Mac's perspective, rather than a broken AD.
I'm just thinking of a utopian environment where AD and the Macs, it just worked. So these issues we've been talking about with Kerberos and with everything else didn't exist. Who would use Active Directory in that scenario?
Well, I was going to ask is, I mean, to a certain degree, very large corporation where AD does work, it works pretty well, with the exception when they decide that they're going to offer people an app on their phone to change their password. Kills it when the user gets back to the machine and can't log in. You know, I don't see a lot of problems in our environment with AD. I'm curious about what problems other people, because I haven't seen problems with AD for quite a while.
Are you changing passwords regularly?
Well,
Using FileVault?
FileVault was a point I was hoping someone would bring up because it's not.
I mean, FileVault's not perfect. We're not seeing massive problems with it. So if the user changes their password on their machine using the Apple tools, no problem.
That's the magic path, isn't it?
The user changes their password when they're on the domain.
And every
If
all the moons are in a line.
changing AD,
It's just right.
or if you have a web-based tool that resets your password.
So how many people
They have a
here?
web-based tool, or OWA, or an app on their phone, or whatever.
Exactly, and then you have your AD admin say, well, it works for PCs.
So how many people here have got FileVault 2 and they use AD bindings as well? Or?
Yeah, not on the same things. AD bound doesn't have FileVault because they're iMacs and no one's going to walk out.
Well,
Okay, so your desktops are AD bound, and your FileVault machines
Oh, the laptop.
are the laptops which aren't AD bound.
you are lucky.
And why are they not AD bound?
It's a dodgy bullet.
They didn't want to. They wanted a consumer experience.
I want a consumer experience. So the user experience And did you breathe a sigh of relief? Did you have to worry about the file mess with the passwords? Or?
To be honest, at the time we didn't know anything about it. We had no experience, and we just did what we were fucking told.
So now you're smugly sitting there going, we knew that. You could have told us.
This consumer experience thing is a big one, and it's creeping in. Again, that's why I'm saying that this discussion is a big part of it is cultural, and it's not just what you're doing now and what we've been doing for 10 years, because in all fairness, binding computers to AD has allowed us to do interesting things where we can log people in over Wi-Fi and give laptops to students and so on, and it works nice. But when you have someone saying, Apple are spending a lot of time optimizing the interface and this and that and the performance, and I used my computer for 3 days when it was new, and then one of your support guys came in and did stuff, and now it's a lot slower. Inevitably, they're not going to be interested in .local and so on. Right? They won't listen to it. But that's an added level of pressure that first you can do without, at least I can, and also if you think about it from their point of view, and you can still provide them the same access to services and the same user experience that you want, and the same level of security that you are required to and that you want to. Why not? Inevitably, this is where we're going. Who here thinks that Apple want people to continue buying to AD?
I would like to understand how you can deliver the same experience without issuing a TGT at login or then unlocking the screensaver. No, seriously, we are extremely federated here. New numbers are about 200 different active directories which have no relationships between them. But we have one good language, so fucking awesome MIT purpose. And one thing we do, we bind people to whatever I already know. But we make sure that you also have the wonderful purpose project that makes sure that if there's a one-day cluster, and you just need a one-day cluster, that your single sign-on experience is amazing. And this is how we could roll it out globally through the whole campus. Because our workstations, that amazing purpose, or browsers, that every little piece of software could enable GSS API, enable it. So you never ever type the fucking password.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How do you do this without getting the users a ticket when they log in, or when they re-log in by typing the password?
I'm not going to disagree with you, right? That's why I started this by saying that it really comes down to the environment you want to support. Sorry?
It's all about user experience.
Yes.
But I think, to be fair, not many people's users will experience a 200 AD environment.
That's you never ever type in my password because this one people don't like.
We have 4 DC, 4 domains, sorry, and 4 forests, and we leverage Keros, which means that just talking about the user experience, it means that when the user gets his Mac wrapped up, he just opens it, go through DP, enter the AD login password, then we install Cambinder, prompts for the login password, and then store in the keychain, and he forgets about it. And just after this, so this took maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes if he read every line from the setup assistant. And then he opens, here we have Google Chrome, he opens Google Chrome and goes to mail.client.com, pretendco.com, and it opens Gmail, and you see the operation bar, and with his email, like his Gmail, work Gmail, without doing anything else. And this is quite cool. We have Druva as well. Druva does exactly the same. So Druva is a crash plan. I don't know the story about Druva, but it's like a crash plan that prompts. Oh, this is a new computer. Do you want to restore your backup? Is it replacing an old computer or is it a new one? So maybe you're aware of this. You get, of course, Google Drive. You get access to the Wi-Fi straight away. We use a SCAPE server, so this is a missing piece. We use a SCAPE server with dynamic tokens and behind the firewall, so you can still get it outside, even from the Apple Retail Store. So it's already there when the user come back to the corporate network. And I'm forgetting lots of things, but it means that the user only enters this password once during the setup assistant, and then everything is done. And I don't have side effects. Twice. Sorry. So once during setup assistant and once with CamMinder. So it means it's so easy for the user. We don't have any, or there's a lot of side effects for AD, for binding with AD. We all know, maybe you will know very soon. And yeah, it's like, for me, it's like installing, binding to AD is a bit like installing WebSense or so forth, where every time you do an upgrade, never sure that it will still work. You have side effects. So.
But it's also the level of federation you guys have. I mean, we're a university, you guys are a university, but I don't think you can compare the two environments. And
I'm trying to say something. I'm trying to say that you define what your user experience should be, and that defines your focus area. We decided we want to eliminate password cards. And as we had that really good coverage facility, we enabled it everywhere to coverage server operators to enable on their end, because the clients were ready, the servers were. Yeah. And then the server arguments got, after a while, the idea actually doesn't cost as much, 5 lines of config change, and there we go. So I'm totally neutral in all these issues you have on mobile devices without with IDs.
You can do single sign on a mobile device.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about like the mobile account nonsense.
Oh no, I mean an iPhone.
Oh.
So I think Marco's got many hundreds of ADs that are federated, and he's got because of the correctly scaled environment, he's got.
If you want an AD or not, totally constant. You don't need one. If you want one, you get it.
But because of your infrastructure, you've got the correct teams that have actually joined the dots and made stuff available to connect. When I started at Pentland, the proxy server was using NTLM authentication only. Yeah. So
I still quite like it.
You would.
Old school.
So I mean, like Dennis was saying, I think it's infrastructure allowing, but generally in a scaled environment, you would hope you'd have that right stuff put in with the Kerberos stuff. How often do your users change password?
60 days. Once a year.
60 days, 365, 60, 90, 30.
Why did you change every 30 days?
Why not?
We'll turn that
Keep you in the job.
Okay, so we've got different. So I guess so. You guys change every year. Is that per academic year? Is that the idea? New year, new password.
for us, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the worst time of the year. That's when everyone complains.
Have that 12 times a year. Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to get a feel for.
Yeah.
But I mean, Kerberos. Kerberos is a thing. So forget AD, right? So Kerberos. If you try and get a Kerberos ticket and your time's wrong, yeah, you know your time's 10, 15 minutes out, you're screwed. Unless you've got that.
Like for what?
Yeah, essentially. Thanks, James. I mean, you can change the time out, right? You can change it for 5 minutes, but you want it every generally it's within 5 minutes, or am I completely off base?
5 minutes.
And okay, so that's actually not just an AD thing on its own. That's actually just a Kerberos principle thing. If you've got that working, great. If you've got really bad DNS, you're still going to struggle getting Kerberos tickets as well, aren't you? So the pain points you might find from AD, some of them, which is generally DNS at the time, are still something that you might have. You may have the Kerberos. So some of the pain's not going to go away necessarily. how many people here have machines that work and then suddenly can't log in until you rebind?
Which days?
It's been a long time since.
How many people set the password to change 0 days?
Not for a long time.
Oh, so so most of you guys keep the 14 days password change on a Mac. So
Yeah.
that's what I do. Okay, I keep it to 0.
Well, how much influence do you have over the AD?
A lot less than I think I do.
Okay. You've got a good open relationship with the administrator, presumably.
They get annoyed with me and tell me to fix it.
Okay. Because in my experience, you've got the AD administrators. Well, okay, I'm going to do a scan of the whole AD, and if the machine hasn't changed its password in 30 days, I'm going to delete it.
So Stuart's point is tombstone.
Yeah.
So if an AD object hasn't updated itself with X amount of days, what I delete it. So a you guys have that enabled and you make sure they update the record and stuff? No, yes, no, there's like 2 people nodding, everybody else is asleep, awesome. Okay, because there's some of the pain points I think you have when you bind a machine. So you've got your time, your DNS, which really you want to get them sorted regardless of bind or not. And then you've got to look at your computer objects and how you manage that in regards to the password changes and stuff. But really, so file vault as well, we said about change your password during line, it updates the file vault too as well, updates with that. When you change it when you're alone for the DC, it's all good. Change your password outside. I mean, how many of you guys, we email people when their password is due to expire within 5 days via Exchange and offer them to change it to OAuth, which could cause an issue. How many of you guys notified via a method other than Apple's login window?
Not sure scripts and email to them. I think it's in 20 days. We give them 20 days, and the only way they can change it is from within syspress. So they've got one way that absolutely works. That's that. We don't have any problems.
Cool.
I don't think, have you ever had a problem with this? Occasionally, but
Not recently, certainly not since our pack time. We had a few bits and pieces with
yeah, they were
sanity, but no, not since 6 months.
So you guys bound to AD, and you're changing it locally for system preferences, and it's updating the local record, and I'm guessing, so for clients in your case, will they update if they're off the network, or?
No, but they've got VPN on the machine. If they can update the VPN.
Right, so the only other time you might have an issue is when they change it locally when they're not on VPN and mismatch it.
Yeah,
and they do.
That's quite quick.
Okay, so you've mitigated your issues by forcing people through, again, Apple standards, rather than going through some crazy Apple script talk and some idiot rights.
Same situation. People, as long as people use the Apple system apps, login window, change the password.
So no, we'll wait for that.
It's when it's outside of that, it's not saying it's
We get firewall issues if they've changed it via or the stupid app that's on your iPhone. The Mac's on prem, then it's their old password that's in firewall, and then it all kind of works over after that.
So Mark was saying there's a disjoin between when you change it outside the Mac, whereas you change it in the Mac, change it through, it's actually cool. Step outside of that realm, you're potentially going to have
Not up to you, but I'm just the password change you bumped off. And it seems to be working quite well.
Oh, okay. Apparently I did something right at one point.
Yeah. I've got 5 people running at it and they change it by that, it's fine.
Neil.
I was going to ask, any guys working in education specifically, do you get your users, staff and students forgetting their passwords completely? From the help desk to the military sector?
I do that. That's pretty much normal.
So Neil's question was, is anybody completely forgetting everything? They've got their password, they've got their shoes on, they don't match.
Yeah.
There's something like that, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of worked.
Okay.
some of these issues are pretty similar to Windows laptops, aren't they?
So sorry, what forgot your name, sorry? Mark.
If you've got a laptop,
It's like 15
you
years.
change your password somewhere else and not on your laptop, you go, it's the whole bloody password.
So Mark was saying it's quite similar. If you've got a PC that's on the domain, you logged in, you go change the password to someone else, it then might not
It's
update.
not on the network because you've taken it home or whatever. It's exactly the same situation.
Yeah, we've had recently. I've had once or twice someone take a loaner laptop home and not log into it before they took it home, and then complain they couldn't log into it. Yeah, so that was kind of tough. But it's a similar kind of thing where, because the machine, I've certainly seen a number of calls where the Windows side, the machine cannot authenticate the domain. There's a wording for it. The trust relationship with the domain is, which is that kind of thing potentially where they then come back on. So we're saying, so the computer object's trying to change its password, not on the AD, and then it's, because you've got two levels of passwords. You've got the computer, you've got the user. And then these guys see it quite smugly, not binding, don't have this. So I'm trying to.
Yeah, the keychain thing is a particular, that happens, like Neil talking about it, it happens a lot.
I thought a lot about that. And, my company went crazy. On the iOS platform, there's the application VPN, which pretty much takes on when you start the application and you're online. And I spoke a lot with my technical department at Apple. And I would like to see other application VPNs on OS 10. And one application should be authentication. So whenever I want to authenticate, there's no VPN because I don't want to open my whole authentication service to the entire world. But I'm happy to use a certificate based with a security well-kept certificate, global VPN that enables authentication.
Or Apple's Enterprise Connect potentially, or something.
No, that's not that. Per application VPN, authentication being the prime example of a nice application, perfect use case in the technology of iOS and OS 10.
So if a client requires, if an application requires Kerberos authentication, dial into your network kind of thing.
Whatever calls PAM.
Good.
Do you think though this is a good example though, because do you think that where Apple are going with iOS, especially the per application VPN, is something that a number of people have been saying, "Lord, this can be very useful in OS 10." But do you think that what they're doing with iOS, the fact that again there's no user context and you access services, fair enough, it's a different type of device and you would provision it under different circumstances. But
no, they depend on Kerberos on iOS.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna.
No, I'm not against Kerberos. I think this is the point you're making far better than perhaps I am. Is exactly what is on my mind as well. It's not about binding the computer necessarily anymore, and it's a useful thing under circumstances, especially in education or if you have computers that are going to stay here and you want people to roam around. Fair enough, but there's already a computing platform, more than one, iOS being one, that is already doing it. And maybe the fact that these are phones and tablets is a bit tricky because we don't see them as necessarily computers, but you can see where it's going. So to move on the desktop side of things, on the OS 10, Windows side of things, to move to that, it's not going to be an overnight change because we're still working, in the same model. We're still following the same models that we've been following. We older people since the 80s, right, 70s, 80s. Well, I don't know. but the user context that doesn't exist in iOS, yet here it is an almost complete, if not complete, computing platform that can make use of technologies, especially in regards to authentication, Rob said, that we can't necessarily do in OS 10. So maybe, again, the access to services rather than bind a device to a particular directory service is something that is worth exploring. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm going to go back to LSE and unbind all my machines, right? Because that's pointless. That would be silly.
There's something to do.
Do that password check. I'll bind all the machines on password check.
It's fine, they're just use the same old password. But I mean,
in an ideal world, you want to bind the user, not bind the machine.
But that's it. Again, it's access to services.
If there was a methodology saying, okay, actually, let's bind the user, let's not bind the machine.
Or identify the user.
Token outside of those AD credentials, reject
Well, how is that any different to setting up user accounts on Windows 10 with a Microsoft login? Or
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
All you need is at some point a federation back to your internal, and there you go.
Yeah,
And that will be at some point.
And this is a bit far out, right? But and maybe not within the scope of this discussion. But as we see this happening already in iOS, and the whole idea of social computing is based on this idea of a digital passport, right? The need for AD came. Well, eventually they will, though. That's the irony. The need for AD came because companies wanted to provide their employees with digital credentials, right? So you can authenticate to company systems. That's the idea. It's as simple as that. I mean, it ended up managing computers because it's a Windows platform. This is what they used. But as you have things like, companies like Apple are interested in provisioning the device, and after that, that's it, basically. This is where Jamf comes in. But the idea of a digital passport, although it's a bit sci-fi, it's already, you mentioned it. Windows with Microsoft ID, Apple ID, even on whatever, Google have something similar, right? And you can use it on Android. Again, I'm not saying, I said this is a bit far out. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen tomorrow, but you can just leave a bit of space for that.
No, it will come. It's now you have seen like how even Facebook, when you authenticate through Facebook, because they provide their own single sign-on capabilities. So I know, but like Okta, Ping Identity, or this, I'm not too familiar with this, but this is, I guess, the future is to just to get maybe a connector on the Mac itself that can connect to Google, Facebook, maybe not, but or any Apple ID, or so. Yeah.
Well, Apple seems, as you say, that's the direction. If you kind of read between the lines, then you've got to a lot with that plan. You can't fight against them. You've got to read between the lines. And if you look at the emphasis that's placed on the iCloud account and Apple ID when you're setting up the Mac, and if you do accept all of the defaults, you will be signing into your Mac with your iCloud password, and the two will be kept in sync. So, with, I guess, as time goes on and the Apple ID is developed further, thinking about the iOS 9.3 developments, particularly managed Apple IDs, is that something that would perhaps take away the need to bind to ID because you'll be authenticating with a managed ID, and as a company, you would be able to set up and provision those managed IDs.
But it's about identity management, isn't it? And if would you be surprised if in the next 2 to 3 years you have some sort of service that's similar to DB but for identity management, and you can create the same trust relationship, let's say, that you create with your MDM server and DB, but for people. This way you can take care of provisioning devices as well as access at the same time. And similarly on the Windows.
All right. So, any more for any more, or should we wrap up?
Can I ask?
You two have been very quiet.
Because secretly we hate binding to AD, but someone has to be pro it.
Actually, that's quite that it was mentioned, and I googled it. But what's the deal? I don't know. Shut up.
Essentially, if you want to pay an Apple engineer to come out to your organization and give them money, they will come and set it up for you. And to find out anything about it, you need to charm a snake.
Okay, that's why I know nothing about it.
Yeah.
In 2 words,
there's a channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite surprised when we said it's Sam. They were like, what is this?
I'm using it for a client, and so about the publicity, the things that went around, I don't know, but the thing is that you have to implement it. If you need to have it today, you need 2 days of Apple professional services. Not that you need it, but it's, I guess, it's their way to make sure that, I don't know, it's working, have support. I guess it's a bit, it's easy.
It's a jump start for a single app.
Yes, exactly.
For a single application, not for a suite, for an app.
Wow.
But
I've seen so many active, I've got so many different places, and I see lots of active directories. I think, wow, who set this up? I can appreciate that Apple, they can't just give you an app and say, this is going to solve, this is a magic pill, and this is going to solve all your problems. Because what if your Active Directory is the biggest mess going? There is no pill big enough to solve that. So
then you have to buy it, we've got the solutions we've discussed tonight.
I can see their point, that they don't just hand over this thing that will...
So effectively, you're paying out more in support. Yeah, it will cost more in support to actually support it. If you get it set up, you'll be able to see it.
No.
This ain't gonna work, this isn't gonna work.
Really, it's like Carminer. You install it and it works. Usually, it's not always the case, but it's very simple.
So it fixes AD?
It fixes everything. Yeah,
Fixes it?
yeah.
No,
it depends.
Spend 2 days in your environment fixing your AD for you.
Oh, and you have to
they give you the standard plug-in and go, ta-da! I told you it would work.
When you're outside the US, you have to pay for them to fly over as well.
Now what? We had to pay. So my client had to pay to the US subsidiary because they have to, the invoicing has to be made in US. So that's the first thing. So it's not available here, or it's not that you have to fly engineers here. It's that the invoicing has to be done in US, and then we did it with a WebEx really in 20 minutes, because. And then we stretched to an hour because we started to discuss about Wi-Fi and all. But yeah, it's very simple software. So it's just another way to market. I think it's a bit weird.
So it manages your Kerberos ticket and mounts shares. Is there anything else?
And
does it do password expiry?
Yes.
Does it do keychains?
It does. I don't know. It does a synchronization between. When you change a password in Enterprise Connect, it changes your local password and AD password.
Okay.
So of course,
same system.
Yeah.
There is an Enterprise Connect channel on Mac Admin Slack. But there are some of the professional service engineers there as well, so they will tell you
nothing.
Give me money.
It's amazing how little information is in the actual answers. It's kind of it's a thing. We know it's a thing. Definitely.
So what? So that's what I've been doing is, so I've worked some on AD Pass One. I've also worked a bit on CurveMinder. Then there's another guy called Kyle. There's also a product called Share Mounter. And essentially, we were kind of talking about stuff anyway between us 3 and 4 with Peter, and realised that potentially we've got an open source version of Enterprise Connect anyway between our apps. The problem is AD Pass One's in AppleScript and CurveMinder's in. And ShareMounter in Python. So we're trying to work towards a standard code base and bring AD Pass One into Python and work together. And potentially, we're going to look at trying to build a free open source version of. Well, I've got some crazy ideas that we're going to talk about. I've already got AD Pass One giving password expiry without being bound to the domain by using LDAP search. So I want to look at modules maybe, but it's just very fun playing around with it. And it just found out that we were doing this stuff, talked about it anyway, and then Apple put a badge in and charged $5,000. If you ever want to light a fire under some people, that's the kind of thing that we've now realised we've got to rise to that challenge now. We're going to try it. So that's something we're going to look at. But yeah, I mean, is there anything that you guys want to ask? Or
I'm upset that no one's mentioned what was the most important reason to buy into AD. I mean, you can't use Centrify if you don't buy into AD.
Right.
What? No one uses Centrify?
Hang on.
You would.
It's the same guy with a dot local.
There we go. So you don't apply GPO to it. Okay.
Yeah, previously.
So, right, on that wonderful note.
Would anybody else like to add anything? You guys have the stage. You can add anything you want. I've said it enough. So I could do one really cheesy thing. Who's coming to Macaduck? It's called Macaduck, not Mac AD UK. So the Mac Having Developers Conference that AMSIS are not running, but they are. February 9th to 10th.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Still tickets?
Well, it's more days now. It's like,
Anyway,
we can't get T-shirts printed anymore. So
there's 2 days.
if you sign up, it's too late. Or you'll get a random size.
Talking, most of us talking for 2 days.
Oh, I'm not.
But not for the whole 2 days. You're okay.
God, no.
And there's a lot of cool guys coming over from various places. You got Mr. Troughton, as in the flounder.
Greg Nagel.
Some guy called
Mr.
Greg
Monkey.
Nagel, who you may have heard of. There's
lots and lots.
if you've used BSD Pi, or it's just awesome. And then they felt sorry for us local lads and put us on there. So try and grab.
It's supposed to be a UK event. Just went a bit international without meaning to.
Yeah, so it's international with local talent invited. See you guys there as well.
Yeah, see you there.
Found this interesting? You go carry on talk? We need to go to the toilet, we're going to the pub, or?
Okay, so
Cool, thank you.
top down the road.